Laura had followed Daniel for 10 years, only to finally hear the words "marry me." Yet on their wedding day, he abandoned her and rushed off to save his longtime secret admirer, his female secretary. Worried for his safety, she pushed aside her own heartbreak and chased after him. When she arrived at the scene, she happened to see the secretary, who had been thrown from the building by Daniel's rival while trying to protect his documents, become a vegetable. Daniel sent her to the hospital with the best medical care out of guilt. Laura also followed Daniel's words, taking care of the secretary's mentally ill mother for 2 years, enduring every malicious humiliation during her episodes, until she had another episode and cut up everything in her bag, including the marriage certificate. When she dragged her exhausted body to get it reissued, she was stopped by the staff. "Ms. Laura, this marriage certificate of yours is fake. According to current records, your marital status is unmarried." She was stunned, as if struck by lightning. Laura didn't know how she made it out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. She only remembered that everyone looked at her with pity and sympathy. "Did you hear? Her husband got a marriage certificate with someone else, and is fooling her with a fake one. Who knows if she's the mistress or the other woman is?" "Are you stupid? Of course, the one without the certificate is the mistress. Why even ask? Having a certificate makes it a legal marriage. Without one, back in the day, that was just fooling around." She stumbled into the car, trembling all over like a sieve. Echoing in her ears was the conversation she had with the staff at the Civil Affairs Bureau. "How is that possible? We've been married for 2 years. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Please double check." The staff member sighed helplessly and turned the computer screen toward her. "No mistake, Ms. Laura, you are indeed unmarried, but your husband, he is married. His spouse column lists Jessie. Do you know this woman?" Laura sat in the car, laughing one moment and crying the next. Jessie, how could she not recognize her? She was the female secretary who had been recuperating in the hospital, the woman who had harbored a secret crush on him for many years, never receiving a response, yet stubbornly refusing to give up. Her mind buzzed with noise as she slammed the accelerator and sped home. The door wasn't closed properly, so no one inside noticed when she entered. Daniel and his brothers were sitting in the study, with occasional laughter and the sound of clinking wine glasses coming from inside. "Daniel, we've got to hand it to you, with your big and little wives in each arm, enjoying the blessings of having both. We brothers are truly envious. Both sisters-in-law are beautiful, each more stunning than the last." Daniel, upon hearing this, kicked him hard with his foot and scolded with a laugh, "Stop talking nonsense. It's fine if you joke like that in front of me, but when we're outside, you absolutely mustn't let Laura hear you, understand?" "Daniel, are you that afraid of Laura finding out? Then why are you still hiding from her the fact that Jessie has already woken up, and what's more, that Jessie told you to marry her and you just agreed without even blinking? If you say you have no feelings for her, the brothers really don't believe it." Daniel didn't respond to him right away. He just sat on the leather sofa, leaning his head back slightly, his eyes half closed, revealing an inscrutable expression. "Laura has been with me for 12 years. Her temper is like a powder keg, exploding at the slightest spark. Sometimes I feel she's so fierce she doesn't even seem like a woman. 12 years, touching her body feels like touching my own. What's the point anymore? But it's not that I don't love Laura, on the contrary, I can't live without her for the rest of my life. But Jessie is different." Suddenly, a light seemed to ignite in his eyes, carrying a hint of reminiscence. "She's gentle and shy, her body so delicate that it turns red with just a touch from me. I gave my love and the chance to stand openly by my side to Laura. Jessie can only be my woman in the shadows. Besides, she almost lost her life saving me, so giving her some security is the least I can do. Other than that, there's nothing more I can give her." Laura pressed herself tightly against the wall, supporting her trembling, unsteady body. "Daniel, but what if Laura finds out? You even tricked her into taking care of Jessie's mentally ill mother for so long. If she finds out, she'll really hate you to death." Daniel lowered his gaze, as if thinking of something. He sat up straight, crossing his hands in front of him. "Don't worry, I'll never let her know." The pain in his chest felt like something had struck it hard, and his breath seemed to cut off in that instant. Tears fell like pearls from a broken string. 12 years. She had been chasing his shadow for 12 years. No wonder there was no wedding. No wonder he was always on business trips. No wonder he was so busy late into the night and refused to return to the room. At this moment, I feel like a complete joke. The laughter inside continued. She wiped away her tears, turned around, and walked away to make a phone call. "I agree to return to the country. I agree to the arranged marriage." "Really, you're not lying to me?" An excited voice came through the phone, but to Laura's ears, it only sounded disgusting. "But I have one condition." "Name your terms." As long as you agree to marry into the Emanuel family, Mom will agree to any condition you propose. A trace of mockery slipped from the corner of her lips. I want a helicopter to pick me up. I want you to erase all my records here. And finally, I'll give you a design. Have someone make this wedding dress for me. A puzzled voice came through the phone. The Emanuel family has already prepared everything on their end. There's no need for you to prepare your own wedding dress. Besides, how could a girl prepare such a thing herself? Laura, her lowered eyelashes trembled slightly. She didn't want to waste any more words with her, speaking indifferently. Don't worry about it, bring the things, and I'll keep my promise to marry Justin. Just as she was about to hang up the phone, Laura's mom's voice came through again. Before you marry over, remember to get divorced. Emanuel's family doesn't care if you've been married before, but if you're going to end it cleanly. Laura smiled self-deprecatingly. Don't worry, I've never been married, not from the beginning to the end. Her arm went numb and dropped limply. What do you mean never been married? From the phone came the faint sound of Laura's mom asking in confusion, but she didn't respond to her anymore and instead hung up the phone. Unmarried? Who's unmarried? A familiar voice suddenly came from behind. Laura slowly turned around and saw Daniel. His face stiff with a strange smile on it, he strode over and tightly grabbed Laura's wrist. She felt the pain from his grip, but didn't make a sound. Her expression remained calm as she stared unblinkingly at him. I'm not married. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on her without blinking. Suddenly, a smile tugged at the corner of his lips as his large hand tightened around her shoulder. Darling, if you're unmarried, then what am I to you? Stop joking around, you can't get rid of me in this lifetime. A kiss landed on her forehead, yet she only felt a chill running from head to toe. Yes, Daniel, I'm unmarried, so who should you be to me? She bit the tip of her tongue until she tasted blood, her nails digging deep into her palms. The urge to scream and vent surged in her throat, yet she could only clamp down on her lower lip. Her eyes were full of a stinging sourness, so sharp it hurt. Daniel, seeing her like this, flusteredly reached to wipe the tears from her face, a tearful Laura. How long had it been since he last saw her like this? Such a state from her instantly ignited his protective instincts. He looked at her with a stern expression. Darling, who bullied you? You never cry. What exactly happened to you today? Laura's eyebrow twitched slightly. Did she cry? She instinctively raised her hand to wipe her eyes, and indeed, they were wet. Looking at Daniel, who was clearly worried about her, she still chose to brush it off with a self-deprecating smile. I'm on my period, just menstrual cramps, I'm tired and want to sleep. Daniel scooped her up as she tried to leave. When he and Laura entered, the group of brothers who had been teasing her earlier suddenly changed their tune and started praising them as the perfect couple. Daniel chased them away with playful scolding, then he carried Laura to the bed. He lay down beside her fully clothed, his warm palm gently stroking her lower abdomen in slow, circular motions. Does that feel good, sweetheart? On these few days every month, she would be tormented by menstrual cramps to the point of feeling life was worse than death. Daniel would put aside all his work, rush home, and simply lie beside her, warming her until she fell asleep. He loved hearing her respond in a soft, drowsy voice that she was comfortable. He said he adored her in that tone of voice. It reminded him of the past. Back then, she was the City P. Franklin young lady, timid yet stubborn, after her father's death. Her mother became a well-known socialite in their circle. She loathed Laura's mom and detested Laura's mom. In order to maintain a glamorous facade, she continuously sleeps with men to obtain inexhaustible wealth. She rebelled, learning to hang out in bars and drink like others. Because of her mother, she was almost raped. At the critical moment, it was Daniel, who came from a gangster background, who saved her. From that day on, she stayed by Daniel's side. She learned that he was the illegitimate son of City P.S. Jeffrey family. She learned of his troubled origins. She learned of his pride and lofty ambitions. She accompanied him abroad in secret, staying by his side as he Italy quietly built his own influence. He thought she was too delicate. Then she would become strong. He disliked how she would cry at the drop of a hat. She would swallow her teeth and blood. Even if a bullet pierced through her shoulder, she would never shed a single tear. She had followed Daniel for 10 years, transforming from the timid and fearful Laura into the Laura who struck fear throughout the organization. Only then did she finally pry open Daniel's heart. She waited for his words. Laura, marry me. But now, she finally understood, everything was a lie. Daniel waited for a long time, but still received no response from her. The phone beside the pillow buzzed incessantly. He quickly withdrew his hand and picked up his phone. In the dimly lit room, the phone screen illuminated his face, which was full of smiles. His fingers began tapping rapidly on the screen. Laura, the lingering warmth on her lower abdomen gradually faded away. The next morning, Laura struggled to get out of bed. Her face deathly pale, she wanted to pack her things in advance so that when the plane arrived to pick her up, she could leave directly. As soon as she opened the door, she nearly collided with Daniel, who was carrying a bowl of brown sugar ginger tea. Daniel frowned deeply and placed the bowl on the table. "Darling, why are you up already? Why not sleep a little longer?" Laura gazed indifferently at his face. "Aren't you supposed to be on a business trip? Why are you still at home?" Daniel always had various reasons to go on business trips every month. She used to think he was genuinely busy. Now she finally understands. He was indeed busy, but not with work. He was busy spending time with Jessie. Daniel pulled her into his embrace, tapping his index finger on her elegant nose bridge. "You're feeling this unwell. How could I still go on a business trip?" "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere today. I'll stay home with you." His tender words, if it were before, Laura would have been moved to tears. She loved Daniel so much that even the slightest warmth he gave her felt like happiness. Looking at Daniel, whose eyes held only her, Laura felt as if her heart was being pricked by needles. Her trembling lips had yet to form a word. His phone rang. Seeing the caller's name, Daniel instinctively glanced at her. "Honey, George is calling. I need to take this," without waiting for her reply. He turned and strode into the study. The sound of the door locking was clear and distinct to her. She had no idea George had changed his name to Jesse. She didn't touch the bowl of brown sugar ginger tea on the table and turned to walk outside. The study door soon sounded again. Daniel changed his clothes and hurried out, his face beaming with joy. For a moment, he forgot about Laura, until he quickly walked to the door. "Where are you going? Weren't you supposed to stay home with me?" Perhaps he was too overjoyed. Daniel didn't even notice the heavy sarcasm in her words. He pulled Laura by the waist and excitedly planted a kiss on her lips. "Honey, I've closed a big deal, but I need to be there in person to sign the paperwork. Wait for me at home, and I'll bring back your favorite little cake." Laura smiled with her lips but not her eyes. After he left, she followed him out the door shortly after. As expected, Daniel wasn't going to sign any major deal. He drove to the airport, and before long, she saw Daniel walking out with a woman who had a slightly protruding belly. He took out the flowers he had prepared long ago and presented them to the woman, and that face, Laura was already all too familiar to her. It was Jessie, who had been a vegetable for 2 years. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. So, not only had Jessie been conscious for a long time, but she was also pregnant. Laura trembled all over. Her heart feeling as if it were bleeding, Jessie hopped and hid in Daniel's arms. Daniel took off his sunglasses and gently tapped the tip of her nose with his index finger. Not far away, Laura's eyes suddenly shrank back. This was a gesture Daniel always did when he felt moved by her. It turned out that even this gesture was not exclusively his alone. Jessie couldn't help but want Daniel to kiss her. At first, he glanced around somewhat uneasily. But as Jessie persistently stood on her tiptoes, wrapping her arms around his neck and continuously seeking more, her coquettish demeanor was something he had always adored the most. Daniel felt a surge of heat in his lower abdomen, bent down to pick up Jessie, and headed towards a corner of the airport. Laura numbly followed, but couldn't keep up with their pace. When she arrived at the spot, she realized it was a mother and baby room. The door was tightly shut at this moment, and the sound of intimate kisses could be heard from inside. "Why did you come all of a sudden? Why didn't you bring Emily? Coming alone like this? Do you want to worry me to death?" Daniel's voice, she was all too familiar with it. At this moment, he was firing off questions at the woman inside like a rapid-fire cannon. Seeing him so anxious, Jessie giggled instead. "You have so many questions. Which one should I answer first?" "Answer them all. I want to hear everything." Jessie suddenly gave him a smacking kiss on the lips, gazing at his face with a beaming smile. "To answer them all, it's this, hubby, I missed you." Daniel gasped for breath, his eyes instantly burning with feverish intensity. The next second, he gripped her neck tightly and kissed her back with fierce force. "You little temptress, I'll make sure you can't walk out of this door standing up." "Ah, don't kiss there, husband, I was wrong." "So, you know you're wrong now, too late." His voice was low and hoarse, yet it stung the heart of Laura standing outside the door. From inside, the woman's shy, embarrassed cries and the sound of trickling water could be heard continuously. Her eyes were vacant and lifeless, her heart feeling as if it had been hollowed out, bleeding from within. She walked numbly in the opposite direction. But those voices, no matter how hard she tried, she just couldn't shake them off. Emily was the nanny she had employed for a very long time. But 2 years ago, right after Jessie's incident, Emily suddenly quit. Daniel told her that Emily was returning to her home country to take care of her own grandchildren. Italy's food didn't agree with her, and with Emily not around, She lost so much weight during that time that it made Daniel's heart ache. He made an overseas call and personally asked Emily to teach him how to cook. The image of how serious and focused he was back then is still vivid in my mind, but now, looking back, she could only find it laughable. Laura had no idea how she made it out of the airport or how she got back into the car. The phone suddenly rang. She numbly pressed the answer button. "Laura, we found the person who attacked you at the mall." Her face instantly turned cold. "Wait for me." Laura arrived to find the man had already been roughed up quite a bit. A few days ago, she and Daniel had gone to the mall to buy clothes and accessories for the evening banquet, but inside the mall, they encountered an attack by thugs. The subordinates all thought it was Daniel's archenemy, so they focused on protecting him, but unexpectedly, that person was targeting her. The bullet grazed Laura's calf. She was forced to rest in the hospital for half a month. And the plan to attend the banquet fell through. The hanging thug, upon seeing it was her, was filled with disbelief in his pupils. He was barely breathing, but instead grew furious from shame, using all his strength to shout angrily, "It was you who tied me up. Daniel, call him out. We clearly agreed before that there would be no further consequences, so what is this, playing with me?" Laura felt a buzzing in her head, and her mind instantly went blank. The group of subordinates surrounding her suddenly changed their expressions and began kicking him violently. "If you dare spout nonsense again, I'll tear your mouth apart." They raised their fists and feet, beating him until he couldn't speak. Subordinate Bob frowned deeply as he approached Laura, saying, "Laura, don't believe a word he says. He might be deliberately trying to sow discord among us." Laura was dazed for a long time, as if she had just found her voice again. A faint smile appeared on her pale face. What if everything he said is true? Bob looked at her in astonishment. "Laura." "Bob, I need to talk to him. All of you, get out." Bob was reluctant to leave, but seeing Laura's resolute gaze, he had no choice but to wave his hand and signal his men to withdraw. Just before leaving, Laura called out to him, "Not a word about what happened today to anyone." Bob always felt that Laura seemed like a completely different person, but she had saved his life. Compared to Daniel, he was more loyal to Laura. The door closed, and Laura calmly walked over to the person on the ground. "Tell me everything you know." The man spat out a mouthful of blood, along with the teeth that had been knocked out, mixed in with the bloody foam. He sneered, "Your husband's little lover paid me to cripple you. When your man found out the truth, he paid me to keep my mouth shut. It's as simple as that. What else do you want to know?" Her nails dug deep into her flesh. Laura's face still maintained a forced composure. The man on the ground had a strange look in his eyes. The next second, taking advantage of her distraction, a wire suddenly tightened around Laura's neck. Bob had been waiting outside the door, and upon hearing the noise, he kicked the door open. Watching as Laura's neck was cut and bleeding, his eyes suddenly widened, and to save Laura, he had no choice but to let him escape. The doctor had just finished changing Laura's bandages, and her neck was wrapped in layers of gauze again. Daniel barged in at that very moment, sweat beaded on his forehead, his eyes a terrifying, bloodshot red. When his gaze fell upon her neck, he kicked the nearby stool away with a violent force. "Who was it? Who dared to hurt you? Where is he?" Laura's gaze slowly shifted to him. She used all her strength to try and see the man clearly before her. When he first arrived in Italy, he couldn't yet stand on his own feet, not to mention, his half-brother wanted to hire someone to kill him. The most severe time, he was slashed 4 times on his body, and the blood on his back was like a faucet that couldn't be turned off. It was Laura who carried him on her shoulder, disregarding the danger to her own life. It was she who desperately carried him barefoot through the freezing winter night to the hospital for emergency treatment. After waking up, Daniel grabbed her head and kissed her lips deeply with force. He pressed his forehead against hers, his voice hoarse as he spoke. "Laura, it turns out that when a person is about to die, they finally realize what they can't let go of the most." Daniel couldn't let go of her, but within a few years, another woman had taken hold of his heart. Laura's chest felt hollow, as if something had been scooped out of it. Her eyes held calmness, indifference. "It's fine, I'll handle it myself." Daniel stared at her in astonishment. "Handle it? How are you going to handle it yourself?" He was furious. "Like this right now. Laura, can you stop being so stubborn? I'm your husband. Why don't you inform me before doing anything? Do you really want me to watch you get hurt?" He was so angry he was panting heavily, striding forward until he stood before her, yet his movements suddenly turned gentle. Frowning without a trace of kindness in his voice, he asked, "Does it hurt?" Laura slowly lowered her gaze. What pain from a wound could compare to the pain in the heart? Her husband. Daniel, how could he possibly be her husband? During her stay in the hospital to recuperate, Daniel had practically moved their entire home there. He was busy running around, focusing only on Laura, until one night, a woman who looked like a nurse, wearing a mask, gently pushed open the door and sat on Daniel. He suddenly shook off his drowsiness, looked at Jesse on his knees. And his face changed dramatically. He pulled the person into the inner suite, and before closing the door, he specifically checked on Laura sleeping soundly on the hospital bed. "Who told you to come here?" His words were filled with anger, yet Jesse fearlessly reached down toward him. "Honey, the baby misses his dad. He wants you to touch him. Touch his mom." Her voice was soft and sweet, carrying an alluring charm. Daniel's eyes gradually darkened, his throat bobbing up and down, until all the blood in his body rushed to his head. He could no longer control himself. "Jesse, you really are a slut." From the other side came a man's low roar, along with a woman's deliberately provocative, delicate cries. Daniel's forehead was covered in sweat, his large hand forcefully covering her mouth. "Shut up." But she just had to cry out, just had to let the woman on the outside hospital bed hear. Laura had actually been awake for a long time. From the moment Jesse stepped into the hospital room, she had already been awake. Her whole body trembled. Her heart felt as if it were being squeezed and twisted in someone's hand, the pain so intense that even her fingertips shook uncontrollably. Daniel, how dare he, to humiliate her like this, after he had insatiably sent off Jesse. He quietly approached Laura, carefully, he covered her with the blanket. He wanted to use the hand that had touched Jesse's body to caress Laura's cheek. The next second, she pretended to turn over to avoid it. Daniel withdrew his hand in disappointment. It wasn't until she heard the sound of his departing footsteps that she opened her eyes again. The phone vibrated. "The wedding dress has been mailed. Prepare to leave in a week." She didn't reply, just clutched the phone tightly and closed her eyes, two clear tears tracing paths down her cheeks. Just one more week, she could then completely bid farewell to these 12 years. And in this lifetime, she would never see Daniel again. The next morning, her favorite dishes were laid out on the table. But Daniel was nowhere to be seen. It seemed as if he knew exactly when she would wake up. A message came through on the phone. "Honey, there's an urgent matter in the organization that I need to handle. I'll be back later. Love you." She let out a cold laugh and deleted their chat window. It seemed Daniel had long forgotten that she was also a member of the organization. He used to report every single one of his actions to her without exception. But starting 2 years ago, Daniel had already learned to conceal and deceive. Laura checked herself out of the hospital alone and took a taxi home. She packed up all of her belongings, but left behind everything related to Daniel without taking a single item. She numbly packed her suitcase, arranging each item neatly. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was Jesse's mentally ill mother. Jesse had abandoned her in Italy, while she herself walked away scot-free to enjoy a life of luxury. Jess's mom has always had an illness that fluctuates between better and worse. Over the past 2 years, she has suffered no small amount of torment from it. But every time she remembers that Jesse became a vegetable because of Daniel, she swallows her grievances and endures the pain in silence. She has never uttered a single word of complaint to Daniel about it. Little did she expect that she was foolishly giving her all here. Meanwhile, the two over there were carefreely nurturing a new life. Laura answered the call with a cold expression. From the phone receiver came Jess's mom's furious and frantic shouting. "Laura, you shameless bitch. Did you forget I have a follow-up appointment today? Have you been wishing for my death all along? You just want to get rid of me, to rid yourself of your guilt. I spit on you. I'm telling you, don't even think about it." Harsh, insulting words kept pouring from the receiver. Laura was eerily calm. She didn't hang up. Instead, she agreed to take her to the follow-up appointment. After she rushed to the hospital, Jess's mom wasn't waiting for her in the neurology department, but in the obstetrics and gynecology department. Laura hadn't even spoken yet when she glared fiercely, pointing at her nose and cursing. "It's all your fault. Because of you, I was so angry I went to the wrong place." From beginning to end, Laura just watched her performance, until a young couple walked out of the obstetrics and gynecology department. Her cursing suddenly stopped. "Wife." Daniel suddenly changed his expression and quickly let go of Jesse's hand. Jesse looked displeased but gazed at Laura with a sense of grievance, while the expression on Jess's mom's face was even more amusing. Looking at the scene before her, Laura was certain, back then, Jess's mom had indeed deliberately pretended to have an attack and tore up her fake marriage certificate, and the purpose was self-evident, seeing that she didn't respond. Daniel forced a smile on his face and walked toward her without hesitation. "Honey, I was just about to call you with good news. Jessie has woken up, but she kept it from everyone to surprise us, and only told me after she got off the plane." Daniel wanted to put his arm around her waist, but she instinctively stepped back to avoid it. He stared at her in stunned silence. Laura suddenly spoke up. "Oh, congratulations then. Jessie's eyes sparkled with mischief as she stepped forward and grabbed Laura's hand. Laura, thanks to Daniel taking care of me these past 2 years. I've been able to recover so quickly. I heard from Daniel that you've been the one helping out with my mom all along. Thank you so much. Jessie's sharp nails dug into Laura's flesh. She pulled her hand back abruptly from the pain. Jessie pretended to be startled by her reaction, and the next moment, her body started to fall backward. Standing nearby, Daniel quickly wrapped his arm around her waist and carefully steadied her, before he could say anything. Jess's mom rushed over as if she had gone mad. Slap. A crisp sound rang out as it landed on Laura's face. Daniel's face immediately darkened. He shifted his footing slightly but was abruptly grabbed by Jessie standing beside him. Daniel, my stomach hurts. Daniel immediately panicked. Honey, Jessie is pregnant. Her husband isn't by her side. I'll take her to see a doctor first. You wait for me here. Laura watched his anxious retreating figure, her eyes dry but no longer able to shed tears. Jess's mom looked at Laura with smug satisfaction, the corners of her mouth almost reaching the back of her head. Laura, what do you think you are? How dare you try to steal a man from my daughter? Get lost now if you know what's good for you. You slut. You whore who sleeps with anyone. Her cheeks burning and stinging, she moved her steps in front of Jess's mom. Jess's mom, accustomed to seeing her yield and endure, immediately glared angrily and raised her hand again to strike, but the moment she swung down, someone firmly grabbed her arm. Laura pulled outward quickly, and with a snap sound, Jess's mom immediately fell to the ground, crying out in pain. It hurts so much. I'm dying. Someone help. Someone is trying to kill me. Laura stepped over her and walked straight out of the yard without even acknowledging her. She would never make the same mistake a second time. Jessie came back specifically for the birthday banquet. Daniel used the villa where he once proposed to Laura to celebrate for her. After disarming Jess's mom that day, Daniel quickly found her. She's a patient. Why must you be so particular with a patient? Besides, she is after all Jessie's mother. Can't you let this matter go for the sake of her saving me? Laura, can't you change your stubborn temper? Besides me, who would accommodate you? Look and see who else can tolerate you. Can't you reflect on your own problems? Tomorrow Jessie's birthday party. Listen to me. Go apologize to her, and let's consider this matter settled. Laura didn't respond to him the entire time, but when she heard him tell her to apologize to Jessie, she suddenly let out a cold laugh. And if I don't apologize? If you don't apologize, that painting you asked me to find, I'll give it to Jessie in your name as an apology. Laura was taken aback for a moment. Daniel, that was the last painting my father made before he died. It's the last keepsake he gave me. Just because I won't apologize, you're going to give it to Jessie. He wearily rubbed his temples. I told you, as long as you apologize, I won't give it to her. Be good, remember to go and apologize. Daniel, seeing that she didn't say anything more, took it for granted that she would be there. The next day, he was busy personally arranging the venue for Jessie. Jessie's slightly protruding belly already showing signs of pregnancy. Daniel's subordinates kept calling her sister-in-law to make her laugh. You better not let Laura hear this. I don't want to put her in an awkward position. She spoke understandingly. Daniel felt heartache seeing her so compliant. Then his thoughts turned to Laura, who never listened to him, argued with him, and made him angry. He rubbed his temples. Jessie, they weren't wrong. You are my legitimate wife. I've just wronged you. Before he could finish, Jessie gently pressed her slender fingers to his lips. Daniel, I'm not wronged. As long as you remember me and our baby, that's enough. You've already given me everything I ever wanted. I won't cling to you and make things difficult. Daniel couldn't help but hold her in his arms and kiss her passionately. This scene Laura had already witnessed through the surveillance footage, but just as she arrived, the subordinate outside the door suddenly changed his expression, turned his back to her and whispered a few words into his phone. By the time she entered, everything inside appeared peaceful and harmonious. Daniel walked toward her in a crisp suit. Just as he was about to speak, Laura waved her hand toward the outside. Not far away, Bob dragged a man inside. The man was forcefully thrown by him at Jessie's feet. The bloody, mangled face made her scream repeatedly as she hurriedly backed away to hide. Daniel instantly darkened his expression and stepped in front of her. Laura, what are you doing? She sneered at Daniel with a mocking laugh. Didn't you ask me to come? This is the birthday gift I'm giving her. What, MS? Jessie doesn't like it. Jessie remained hidden behind Daniel, clearly having recognized the man on the ground. Immediately after, Laura quickly pulled a pistol from her pocket. At the sight of the pistol, Jessie lost control and screamed. Ah, Laura, what are you trying to do to me again? Wasn't it enough that you almost made me fall and miscarry last time? What have I ever done to offend you? Immediately, people crowded around to dissuade her. Laura, if you have something to say it calmly. This is a joyous occasion, it's not the time for bloodshed. Yes, Laura, if there's any misunderstanding, let's talk about it after the banquet. You're being too hasty, it's easy for things to get out of hand. Put that away before you hurt yourself. Daniel tensed up and was about to speak when he saw Laura recklessly chamber around and aim it at Jesse. His face turned ashen, and he no longer cared about anything. He also extended his right hand, pulled a pistol from his own pocket, and without a second thought, aimed it at Laura's leg. Bang! A deafening sound echoed. The people present, well-trained, tightly shielded Jesse. Laura felt a sharp pain in her leg, her whole body went weak, and her injured leg uncontrollably buckled forward. Her face instantly turned pale as she slowly looked up at the person standing opposite her, his eyes filled with utter ruthlessness. The spot grazed by the bullet was now bleeding, and her handgun had fallen to the side. George quickly picked up the handgun from the ground, but after picking it up, he looked at Daniel with a stunned expression. Daniel, out of ammo. Daniel stared blankly for a moment, then quickly looked at Laura. Her face was pale, but she curled her lips into a mocking smile directed at him. That expression inexplicably made his heart twinge for a moment, but before he could react, a shout came from the center of the crowd. MS, Jesse, MS, Jesse. Daniel's face instantly tightened. He pushed through the crowd and scooped up the unconscious Jesse in his arms. Bob couldn't stand it any longer and quickly stepped forward to block Daniel. Daniel, how could you shoot Laura? Daniel's eyes darkened, his thin lips pressed into a tight line. Get out. He forcefully shoved Bob aside, but paused once more when he reached the main entrance. Laura recklessly attacked our own people. George, send her to the women's prison for 3 days, let her sober up properly. Laura, she seemed to hear a dull thud from within her chest, as if her heart were being crushed by a boulder, the pain so intense that a fine black mist clouded her vision. Daniel, the gun he used to injure her was the one Laura had given him, engraved with her initials. Daniel, he had once told her that he and this gun would only ever protect her, yet now, he stood against her, using it to shoot her in the leg. George was stunned for a moment, but seeing how determined he was, he had no choice but to comply honestly. Several people grabbed Laura, and Bob rushed over to stop them, only to be forced to his knees by the others. George awkwardly rubbed his nose and said, Laura, I'm sorry. What are you all standing around for? Hurry up and take her away. Laura was shoved forcefully and locked inside the iron door. The wound on her leg was crudely bandaged, and blood had already seeped through by now. She stumbled awkwardly, limping as she tried to find a place to sit. Her pale face was completely drained of color. Laura had just placed her hand against the wall when a basin fell from above, crashing straight toward her face. Several women approached her, laughing loudly. The one leading them suddenly raised her foot and kicked Laura hard on her injured calf. Laura was forced to her knees. The next second, her hair was violently yanked, her scalp feeling as if it were about to be torn off. A dense, all-over pain spread through her body, yet she endured it with sheer will. Laura, you've always been so full of yourself. Never thought you'd end up like this, did you? You probably don't know yet, do you, mister? Daniel has already made a deal with us. As long as we teach you some manners properly, he'll grant us our freedom. Her mind exploded with a deafening roar. Laura's body instantly stiffened. She never expected that for the sake of Jesse, Daniel would actually send someone to teach her a lesson. The pain on her scalp couldn't reach her heart. Seeing her complete lack of reaction, they stuffed a towel into her mouth, then reached out and yanked hard at the top of her head. Instantly, her entire scalp along with her hair was torn from her skull. 2 people held down her writhing body in agony, while others rained punches and kicks upon her abdomen and lower body. Seeing blood spreading down her calf, they dragged her entire body to the iron railing, yanked her forcefully from both sides, and with a sharp crack, a sickening sound echoed. Laura, the veins on her forehead bulged instantly. The excruciating pain so intense it made her want to smash her head against the wall, but before she could make any move, the group viciously yanked her hair and slammed her head repeatedly against the concrete floor with brutal force. This torture lasted for 3 days. Laura, who was released, Laura was thrown at the front gate like a dog that had died of sickness. The person standing nearby did not leave. She nudged the collapsed Laura on the ground with her foot. Mister, Daniel said that because of your problem, MS, Jesse hasn't been able to sleep well for 3 days and nights. He wants you to go apologize to MS, Jesse tomorrow. After saying this, she turned and walked away. At this very moment, Laura couldn't utter a single word, her entire body racked with excruciating pain, so intense it brought tears to her eyes. During the 3 days she suffered unbearably inside. Daniel was instead anxiously worrying about Jessie, who couldn't sleep. She was exposed to the scorching sun, yet didn't even have the strength to stand up. Bob rushed to her side in disbelief when he arrived. "Laura, who did this to you?" He angrily loaded his gun and was about to charge in to confront someone, but the next second, he was Laura tightly grabbed by the clothes. Using her last bit of strength, her throat, burned by hot water, emitted an extremely unpleasant sound. "Take me away, to this place." Bob reached the place she mentioned in just half an hour. There were already people waiting on the helipad, who anxiously took the unconscious Bob from Laura's hands. "You should come with us too." Bob clenched his fists, his eyes turning bloodshot as he looked at Laura, who had been tortured like this, and shook his head. Over the past 12 years, he had watched how Laura had stayed by Daniel's side, how she had accompanied him through the hail of bullets to reach this point, yet her unwavering devotion had brought her such a devastating price. "Quickly take Laura away from here, make sure she never comes back to this place again." Bob watched the plane ascend, his eyes following it as it gradually disappeared from his sight, his fists clenched so tightly they turned pale. He hadn't forgotten Laura's instructions, and he turned away indignantly. Leaving this place, before leaving, he meticulously erased all records of his and Laura's presence here, leaving no trace behind. The car sped swiftly along the road. The phone he threw out the window was quickly crushed by a passing car, staying by Jess's side. Laura felt inexplicably uneasy. Jessie was resting her head on his lap. Seeing his restlessness, she got up and made a move to massage him. Daniel pushed her away somewhat irritably, picked up his phone, and headed towards the balcony. He had thought his phone was out of battery, which was why he hadn't received any messages from Laura, but when he turned on the screen and saw the full battery indicator, his face instantly fell to the bottom. He repeatedly rubbed the edge of the phone's frame with his fingers, unable to understand why. He had done it all for Laura's own good. This place wasn't like back home. Acting impulsively would lead to no good outcome. Just because he could protect her now didn't mean he could guard her for a lifetime. What if he left this world before she did? At that time, Laura, with her firecracker temper, who would be there to clean up after her and protect her, clearly, it was for her own good. But she was as stubborn as an ox. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. For a moment, he didn't know whether he was angry at Laura's ingratitude or at her not contacting him. A pair of soft, boneless hands suddenly reached for his waist. Seeing that he had noticed, they gradually began to explore further down. Jessie accurately found the spot and felt its firmness and eagerness. Seeing Daniel's body grow feverish, she curled her lips and prepared to proceed to the next step. But suddenly her hand was grabbed by someone. Daniel frowned and adjusted her body into proper position. "You've been doing it too much these past few days. Don't hurt the child." Jessie, seeing that she cared more about the child than herself, she deliberately snuggled into his arms coquettishly. "Is the child more important or am I more important?" Daniel, seeing that she was starting again, he could only patiently reply, "You're more important." She raised an eyebrow and continued, "So who's more important, me or Laura?" The room suddenly fell silent. Jessie carefully looked up at Daniel, only to find him silently watching her with a cold gaze. The chill in his eyes pierced her gaze like icicles. It sent a shiver straight to her heart. She had violated Daniel's taboo. Jessie lowered her gaze, concealing the jealousy and resentment in her eyes. When she looked up again, she carefully rubbed her body against Daniel. "All right, I won't joke about this anymore. Daniel, don't be like this. You're scaring both me and the baby." Daniel's gaze turned icy cold, devoid of any affection. "Jessie, don't forget what I told you before. Laura's place in my heart is something no one can ever surpass. I've given you everything you wanted, but don't forget what I want." His tone made her shiver involuntarily. Those words seemed to echo in her ears once again. Forget? How could she ever forget? But she couldn't believe that Daniel, who was so infatuated with her body, would care about Laura. She had merely spent a few more years with Daniel than she had. As long as she gives birth to the child, Daniel's person and heart will only belong to her. Jessie, at this thought, she pretended to be fragile and delicate once again. Her slender legs slipped between Daniel's legs, and as she watched his gaze grow increasingly dark, her actions became even bolder. Daniel scooped her up in his arms and was about to head upstairs when the front door suddenly began to knock. "Daniel, is this package at the door yours?" Daniel looked down at the large box in front of him. The package was tightly wrapped, and the box was brand new. Jessie's face was full of disappointment at being interrupted, and when she looked at Bob, there was a hint of annoyance. She hadn't forgotten that on the day of her birthday banquet, it was the man before her who had persistently and resolutely protected Laura. Instinctively, she also felt an aversion towards him and immediately wanted to send him away as quickly as possible. "Perhaps I wrote the wrong name on the clothes I bought. Daniel, set them aside for now. and we'll look at them later." As she spoke, she reached out to grab Daniel's arm. For some reason, as he looked at that large box, he just couldn't seem to focus. Daniel shook off her hand, strode forward, and opened the box. The moment the lid of the dress box was lifted, everyone present except Bob was stunned. Jessie brimmed with joy as she stepped past Daniel and reached into the box to take out the pure white wedding dress. "Daniel, are you going to give me a wedding ceremony?" They had gotten their marriage license back then, but had never held a wedding ceremony. She had hinted to Daniel a few times, but he always brushed her off half-heartedly, saying they'd talk about it later. Jessie wasn't willing at first, but then she thought, Laura not only had no ceremony like her, but even her marriage certificate was fake. Thinking of this, she no longer dwelled on it. But at this moment, seeing this beautiful wedding dress, it would be a lie to say she wasn't moved. Just as she was about to excitedly say something more, she lifted her hand, and the wedding dress shattered into several pieces, scattering as she shook it. Daniel, his eyes froze, and his expression suddenly changed. This wedding dress, he had seen it before. This was Laura's own design for the wedding dress. It was originally meant to be worn at their wedding banquet in the future. She had only sketched the design, and he had promised her that he would find the best designer to bring it to life. But later, as his gaze gradually shifted to Jessie, the matter was left unresolved. What's going on?" Jessie mutely looked at Daniel, but he didn't look back at her, instead fixing his eyes on the wedding dress on the floor. A sense of unease surged within her once again. His breath hitched, his throat felt as if blocked by something. With a cold expression, he looked at Bob. "Where is Laura?" Bob suppressed the emotions in his heart and answered honestly, "Daniel, you're too important to remember such trivial matters. Laura was sent by you to the women's prison to learn discipline, wasn't she?" His face suddenly stiffened, as if he had recalled her losing her temper and cutting off contact with him. He replied in a somewhat unpleasant tone, "I'm just teaching her some manners. It's not like I've taken away her phone or restricted her freedom. Is it really necessary for her to not even reply to a single message?" Daniel grew angrier the more he thought about it, but then his eyes fell on the wedding dress lying in pieces on the floor. He irritably unbuttoned his shirt collar and asked, "Where is she?" Bob lowered his gaze, concealing the expression in his eyes. "I don't know." Daniel was so provoked by his words that he had fire with nowhere to vent. He cursed, "Worthless," turned around, and left. He completely ignored Jessie shouting his name behind him. Jessie had anger with nowhere to vent. Just as she was about to point at Bob's nose and curse, she was suddenly frightened by his icy glare and took a few steps back. Bob looked at Jessie's lack of courage and couldn't help but let out a scornful laugh. Daniel disliked Laura for not being gentle and considerate enough, but could someone gentle and considerate have repeatedly saved his life over a decade ago? Daniel didn't realize until he got in the car that he had no idea where to find Laura. He struggled with whether to swallow his pride and call her. After thinking for a few seconds, he still decided to drive the car home first. Today is already the 4th day. He had only ordered her to be confined for 3 days. Laura's daily routine is simple to the point of being dull. She hardly goes anywhere except for their home. The sound of the door unlocking echoed through the house. It was already morning, but the familiar figure was nowhere to be seen in the kitchen. The dining table, surprisingly, was covered in a thin layer of fine dust. This was absolutely unacceptable. Laura was a neat freak. She would deep clean the house several times a week. He had been pestered by Jessie recently. Laura had been learning the rules for 3 days, and he had been accompanying Jessie for 3 days. If she came back and saw the room so dirty, she would definitely be frantic and immediately start cleaning up. But now, Daniel looked around. The room was eerily quiet. He seemed to think of something subconsciously, and quickly stepped into the bedroom. Daniel pulled the cabinet door open with a whoosh. Seeing that the wardrobe was more than half empty, his palms instantly turned cold, and his eyes filled with astonishment. He then turned around and went to search through the other cabinets. He searched every cabinet that contained Laura's clothes, jewelry, and important belongings, but the result was obvious. Everything related to Laura had completely vanished. A blinding flash seemed to go off in his mind. He stumbled as he ran to the study and opened the innermost drawer. Inside lay the fake marriage certificate between him and Laura. The moment the drawer was pulled open, his heart pounded like a drum, fast and powerful, as if it might leap out of his chest at any moment. But when Laura's torn-up marriage certificate appeared before his eyes, his lips were dry. His tongue seemed glued to the roof of his mouth, unable to speak. She knew everything. She knew it all. Daniel's body began to tremble violently, as if all his muscles were out of control. His mind seemed to short-circuit, yet he quickly forced himself to wake up and reboot. His trembling hands couldn't hold the phone steady. Several times he tried to make a call, but the phone kept slipping from his grasp. He awkwardly bent down to pick it up. George answered the phone and heard Daniel's trembling voice. He immediately stopped what he was doing. "Daniel, what's wrong over there?" Daniel took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "Laura knows. She knows everything. Go find her, no matter where she is. Turn Italy upside down if you have to, but bring her back to me." George realized the seriousness of the situation and quickly agreed before rushing to gather his men to search for her. But no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't find any trace of Laura. It was as if all information about her had been cut off the moment she stepped into the women's prison. Daniel didn't believe it, so he went alone to the women's prison. When he arrived, Bob was already there waiting for him. "Daniel, do you also suspect this place?" "I do too, after all. Laura disappeared from here. Do you think Laura might have encountered some misfortune here?" "Impossible." Daniel glared at him with bloodshot eyes. With that, he immediately dialed the next number. Before long, a Chinese woman led him into the surveillance room. Watching Daniel's fluctuating expression, the woman opposite him also began to tremble with fear. She started hesitating about whether she should show this surveillance footage to Daniel. Bob, seeing this, he directly snatched the USB drive from her hand and then played it aloud on the computer. As soon as the video started, the sounds of several women laughing, cursing, and smashing things came through, with filthy words flooding into Daniel's ears. They were half squatting, each taking turns slapping the woman who was slumped on the ground. Due to the blind spot in the perspective, Daniel couldn't make out who that person was. All he could see was the pool of blood she had shed, and a foul-smelling towel stuffed in her mouth. Her head was also covered in wounds, with patches of pale scalp visible. And the hair on the ground was clearly torn out by force. Her calf was twisted in a grotesque position, and the flesh on her leg was mangled beyond recognition. The women seemed exhausted from the beating and sat down to rest. In that very moment, the limp, dangling hand suddenly pierced Daniel's eyes. He was struck with horror, as if his breath had been cut off. The watch on that hand belongs to Laura. It was a custom-made watch that Daniel gave her for her birthday. There isn't another one like it in the whole world. Daniel, his eyes fixed, his body rigid, unable to react at all. A loud noise came from the side. Bob slammed his fist hard onto the table. "I won't let those bitches get away with this." He gritted his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. The video is still playing. For 3 whole days, Laura was brutally beaten for 3 whole days. And at the moment she needed him the most, where is he? He's at the villa, with another woman, partying day and night. Daniel's heart felt as if it were being sliced to pieces. 1,000 cuts. His fists were clenched so tight they turned white. Suddenly turned to face Bob. He placed his hand heavily on Bob's arm, gripping it tightly. "Bring the person out for me." Bob had long wanted to do this. Without even taking the time to reply, he turned and left. In the deep night, the underground chamber echoed with agonizing screams. Those who had been torturing Laura were now suspended in mid-air, their bodies drenched in blood that stained the ground crimson. It wasn't us. We were just following orders for money." Yes, it was the woman by your side, Mr. Daniel, who told us that if we handled the matter neatly and efficiently, we could be released early." "Yes, we have evidence. We recorded it at the time. Don't believe us? We can play the recording for you." They were barely breathing, yet still refused to give up hope for life. Instantly betrayed the people who were looking for them. "Miss, are you mistaken? You're actually asking us to beat up Laura. Do you even know who Laura is? I think you've gone mad. What nonsense are you spouting in broad daylight? Laura is Daniel's woman. He's so protective of her he's afraid she'll break if held in his hands, melt if kept in his mouth. Forget about crippling her. We'd probably get shot by Daniel if we so much as laid a finger on her. You'd better find someone else for this job. We're not taking it." A mocking laugh suddenly came through the phone, a familiar voice. Daniel suddenly shifted his body. His eyes grew increasingly deep and cold. "What do you fools know? Daniel loves her. What a joke. Do you know who I am? Let me show you something." A marriage certificate. The wife, Jesse, the whose husband, Daniel. How is this possible? Wasn't it said that Daniel's wife is Laura? You're not trying to fool us with a fake certificate, are you? Ha, open your dog eyes wide and look carefully. This is the marriage certificate that Daniel specially brought me back to the country to obtain. Laura's certificate is the fake one. Now you know who is Daniel's rightful wife. Just do as I say, and I won't shortchange you on the benefits. Not only that, after it's done, I'll transfer a large sum of money to each of your bank accounts. I just want you to be as ruthless as possible when you hit her. The best outcome would be to cripple Laura, aim for her lower abdomen, and make sure she can never have children in this lifetime. Bob couldn't bear to listen any longer. He raised his hand, picked up the whip, and angrily lashed it at the woman hanging in front of him. They were just about to make excuses for themselves again when the relentless whip strikes nearly took their lives. Daniel remained silent, picked up the car keys, and turned to leave. Jessie was overjoyed to see him and rushed forward to hug him. "Daniel, why didn't you let me know you were coming? Did you miss me, or the baby, or maybe?" She giggled shyly and slowly moved her hand downward toward his lower body, but suddenly, someone grabbed her tightly and wouldn't let go. She cried out in pain, but when she looked up, she met a gaze that was fixed intently on her. Jessie felt her heart suddenly beat faster. "Daniel, what's wrong with you? Did I do something wrong, or did I say something wrong? Don't just stare at me without saying anything. Daniel. Daniel, you're hurting me, Jessie didn't get to finish her sentence. Daniel's other hand suddenly clamped tightly around her neck. Instantly, her eyes rolled back, and her hands scrambled up to claw desperately at Daniel's knuckles. She was almost out of breath, gasping for air, her face instantly flushed red, and her feet gradually left the ground. "Ch, child." Daniel sneered coldly and flung her forcefully to the ground. She was like a worn-out rag doll, cast aside by her owner. Jessie was hurt from the fall, immediately clutching her lower abdomen. Tears streamed down her pale face, her expression twisted in agony. "Daniel, what's going on? I'm carrying your child. How could you try to strangle me?" His gaze was icy, his face frighteningly gloomy. "Jessie, I really underestimated you." Jessie was terrified by his words, which were cold and devoid of warmth. She abruptly clutched the skirt of her dress. Footsteps slowly approached her, and Daniel's large hand gently landed on Jessie's cheek. Slap. Jessie let out a sharp cry as her face was slapped to one side, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. He yanked hard on the hair at the top of her head, his vision filled with images of Laura being subjected to round after round of abuse. The excruciating pain made Daniel feel as if even breathing was unbearably agonizing at this moment. "How dare you? Go and find someone to hurt Laura." Slap. Another slap landed, and Jessie was left stunned. Suddenly, a figure darted out with a broom, fiercely beating Daniel. "Get away from me. Who gave you permission to hit my daughter? I'll beat you to death. Beat you to death." Daniel pushed the deranged Jessie's mom away. Her head hit the wall, and she immediately rolled her eyes back, falling unconscious. But Jessie didn't care at all. Looking at Daniel in his rage, she fearfully stepped back. "Daniel, what are you talking about? When did I ever have someone hurt Laura? Did Laura tell you that? Daniel, you know that Laura must be afraid I'll cling to you now that I'm alive, so she's deliberately saying this to frame me. Daniel, you're the father of my child, you can't not believe me," she cried pitifully, hoping to evoke Daniel's sympathy. But Daniel suddenly lifted his foot and kicked her hard in the stomach. A miserable scream immediately echoed through the villa. Bob, when he arrived at the scene, Daniel's hands were already covered in blood. Jessie lay convulsing on the ground, a pool of blood spreading beneath her. It seems her child was already gone. Daniel panted heavily as he removed the specially made tool from his hand. He staggered toward Bob, his eyes filled with deathly despair. "Take her to the hospital. Don't let her die so easily." His voice was hoarse, as if scorched by fire. As soon as he stepped out the door, he received a call from George. "Daniel, we've searched everywhere. We even conducted a carpet search for hundreds of meters around the prison. But, we still haven't found any trace of Laura." Daniel stood frozen in place, his tongue feeling numb, his Adam's apple bobbing as he struggled to find words. Inside the phone, George waited for a long time before finally hearing Daniel's voice. "Keep looking, George, I'm begging you, you must find Laura." George was stunned. Daniel actually said beg. He felt extremely uncomfortable, sniffled, and said, "Daniel, don't worry, Laura loves you so much. She probably just wants to clear her mind and won't abandon you. Maybe, after you get a good night's sleep, Laura will be back by tomorrow morning." "It's different. This time, it's really different." His voice trembled, and his heart ached as if pierced by needles. After more than 10 years together, he understood Laura as well as he understood himself. He hung up the phone, quickly got in the car, and went to search for her in every place Laura might possibly be. When they first arrived in Italy, they were broke as hell, at their poorest. They slept on lounge chairs in amusement parks. On the narrow benches, they held each other tightly, keeping each other warm. Daniel once asked her if she regretted coming abroad with him and suffering here. Laura replied to him with utmost seriousness at that time. That sentence became the belief that supported him through his struggles, but as time passed, the words he once thought he would never forget in this lifetime had actually been completely cast aside after he gained everything. He searched everywhere, each time his hopes dashed. He never imagined that one day, Laura would be willing to leave him. The car sped faster and faster, as if by driving just a little quicker, he could catch up to Laura, who wanted to leave him, until a loud blare of horns sounded. By the time Daniel realized what was happening, it was too late to slow down. He crashed straight into it, in the pitch-black room. A figure suddenly sat up from the bed. Laura gasped for breath, her forehead damp with sweat that soaked the pillow. The bedroom door was suddenly pushed open, and at that very moment, the room's light flicked on. He pulled the woman on the bed into his arms. His large hand gently rested on her back, as if to soothe her. Laura was trembling all over like a sieve, sweat pouring down in streams. Justin, however, didn't mind at all. He just kept holding her, continuously comforting her. Until Laura gradually calmed down, her eyes shifted from dazed to clear as she looked at the man across from her, then slowly lowered her eyelids. "Sorry, I've caused you trouble again." "It's okay. Did you have another nightmare?" His voice was filled with deep concern. "Did you take your medicine on time today?" Laura was still somewhat dazed, reacting slowly as she reached under the pillow for the medicine bottle. But when she unscrewed the cap and saw the empty bottle, she lowered her head again, like a student who had done something wrong, and honestly replied, "The medicine is finished, I forgot to buy more." Justin, his eyes flickered with a trace of heartache. "Wait for me." He gently stroked Laura's sweat-dampened hair before standing up and walking out, but before long, he returned with a medicine bottle, Laura's medical records, Laura's prescribed medications, and her daily activity restrictions. He always kept a backup there. Her mental state was poor, sometimes dazed, sometimes breaking down in tears. Justin cancelled all business trips and worked from home to stay with her. He would never forget the day he went to the airport to pick up Laura. The woman on the stretcher was rushed to the nearest hospital for emergency treatment as soon as she left the airport. The blood on her body stained her clothes red and stung his eyes. Laura's mom fainted on the spot, but not out of concern for her. Instead, she was afraid that if she died, the Franklin family and the Emanuel family's arranged marriage would be called off. It wasn't until she heard his repeated promises and saw how tirelessly he took care of Laura for her that Laura's mom finally felt at ease. Laura woke up, but she had suffered severe psychological trauma. During that period, it was always Justin who accompanied her through it, but her world had always been hers alone. Most of the time, she just sat there by herself. She would stay like that all day, not listening to anyone who called her, not responding to anyone who spoke to her. Laura's mom found it exhausting to watch her. Justin suggested taking her home to rest and recover. Laura's mom happily ran into the room to pack Laura's things, eager for her to leave with Justin as soon as possible. Although the two families had privately arranged the marriage, it had not yet been publicly announced. Although they lived under the same roof, Justin still maintained proper decorum. Under Justin's careful care, Laura had improved significantly, at the very least. She could now listen to what others said and occasionally engage in conversation with people, but she always remained vigilant, keeping a distance from everyone in her social circle, except for Justin. Justin handed a cup of warm water to Laura. Laura took it naturally, as if it were a habit. After drinking the water, Justin brought a towel to wipe her face. She looked up at him dazedly. "Thank you, I can manage on my own." Justin held her outstretched hand. "You rest well. Tomorrow I'll take you for a walk in the park." Somehow, Justin's words seemed to carry a magical quality. Every time she heard his voice, Laura felt an extraordinary sense of security. She obediently nodded. Justin rummaged through the wardrobe and found the new pajamas he had bought for her, neatly placing them beside her bed. As he stood up to leave, she spoke again in a soft, gentle voice. "Thank you." Justin felt a pang of bitterness in his heart. This Laura, so obedient, was truly heartbreaking. Daniel, when he woke up, the hospital bed was surrounded by people. George stood at the forefront, and seeing him stir, quickly urged the brothers to call for a doctor. Daniel, his eyes felt as if something was pressing down on them heavily, making it impossible for him to open them. His voice was hoarse, his lips moving as if he were saying something. George pressed his ear closer and could only hear him repeating those two words over and over, "Laura." His face instantly stiffened. Suddenly, he felt somewhat unsure of how to face Daniel after he regained consciousness. Not long after the doctor arrived, Daniel opened his eyes. His gaze went past the doctor, not caring about how badly he was injured, and stubbornly fixed on George. He lowered his eyes and pressed his lips together. "Daniel, I'm sorry. We've searched everywhere and had people investigate, but there's just no news of Laura. It's as if she vanished into thin air. Otherwise, how could a living person just suddenly disappear at the prison gate, unless someone deliberately erased Laura's tracks? But in Italy, those who could pull this off without their knowledge are few and far between, almost negligible." Daniel refused to give up and ordered his men to keep searching. George was worried about him and insisted on having someone stay in the hospital room, but Daniel threatened him with his own life, forcing him to help find Laura. George had no choice but to have Bob stand guard outside Daniel's room, instructing him to call if anything happened. Bob nodded solemnly in agreement, yet after they all left, he stared coldly at Daniel's hospital room. He slowly walked a short distance away and made a phone call. Daniel had a fractured leg injury, leaving him confined to his bed. He held his phone, constantly checking the messages sent by George, until the door was suddenly pushed open, upon seeing the person who entered. His eyes filled with a chilling coldness. Jessie was stung by his gaze. She slowly walked into the hospital room, each step feeling as if thousands of needles were pricking her feet. The love and hatred on her face kept shifting and changing. "Who told you I was in the hospital?" he demanded sharply. But Jessie completely pretended not to hear. She walked over to Daniel and looked down at his injured leg. Her eyes were fixed on it without blinking. After a long while, she gently placed her hand on it and began to stroke it. "Does it hurt, Daniel?" Daniel's face was dark and terrifying. At this moment, he simply didn't want to see Jessie. If it weren't for her, Laura wouldn't have chosen to leave him. Jessie, seeing that he didn't respond, immediately darkened her expression as well. She suddenly changed her palm into a fist and slammed it hard into Daniel's leg. Ouch! Daniel cried out in pain. Jessie's lingering affection in her eyes turned into countless hatred. "I'm asking you, does it hurt?" Daniel, his eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging on his forehead. He wished he could sit up right now and kick this woman to death, but he couldn't even move without excruciating pain, forced to let Jessie vent her hatred on him. Jessie, seeing him unable to resist, she immediately curved the corners of her lips and laughed out loud, but after just 2 laughs, her face suddenly darkened again. "Daniel, do you know how much I love you? You clearly grew tired of Laura long ago. So why can't you just live a good life with me? We've already gotten our marriage certificate, and I'm already pregnant with your child. Why can't you let me openly be your woman?" Daniel, every inch of his muscles trembled, the extreme pain as if tearing his body into pieces. Sweat dripped continuously from his forehead, soaking the corners of his clothes. He glared furiously at the woman in front of him, gritting his teeth. "Jessie, I was just having fun with you. The only person I love is Laura, so what if we got the marriage certificate? I can kick you to the curb anytime. Do you really think I care about that worthless piece of paper?" Jessie was instantly stung by his words. She immediately covered her head and let out a sharp, piercing scream. "Impossible. You love me, not her. If you loved her, how could you not even give her a real status?" At this thought, she suddenly burst into laughter. "That's right, Daniel. You say you love her. Who would believe that? Laura, ha ha ha. If she believed it, she wouldn't have left you. Daniel, she doesn't want you anymore. She'll never want you again in this lifetime." Daniel's pupils abruptly contracted. His entire body trembled. He simply couldn't find the words to refute or defend himself. Jessie let out an eerie laugh. As she laughed, tears began to stream from her eyes. She loved Daniel so much that she nearly died for him 2 years ago. Just missed it by a hair. She gave her life for Daniel. Could Laura ever do that? She couldn't. Only she is qualified to stay by Daniel's side. She just arranged for someone to teach Laura a lesson. To make her realize who is the woman most deserving of Daniel, who is the woman most fit to stand by his side and be called the boss's wife. But Daniel, on the other hand, actually for the sake of Laura, brutally kicked their child to death. Seeing Daniel in pain, she felt both sorrow and satisfaction. The thought of him disregarding his own life and death made her wish she could grab a knife and chop him to pieces, yet she also shed tears, unable to bear the thought. She laughed hysterically, then suddenly broke down into a dazed, loud cry, until her mind grew somewhat unclear, and spotting the fruit knife on the table, she grabbed it without a second thought. "I'll chop it off, then you won't be able to go find Laura. Yes, chop it off, and you'll be mine alone, eh?" Daniel, his eyes turned bloodshot as he glared furiously at the madman before him. Before he could even put up a desperate fight, the door was suddenly pushed open with force. Bob quickly subdued Jessie, the knife slipping from her hand and clattering at Bob's feet. He concealed the expression in his eyes, and when he looked up again, he gazed at Daniel with a face full of concern. "Daniel, are you okay? This woman has gone mad. I don't know how she escaped from the hospital, but I'll call someone to take her away right now." Daniel's forceful movements had already strained his wound. His face was deathly pale, covered in sweat from head to toe. To prevent Jessie from running away from the hospital again, he simply had her locked in the underground dungeon. The place reeked of mold and the smell of blood. The women who had previously abused Laura were still locked inside. This time, they saw that it was Jessie who had been brought. Their hopes were dashed, and they all felt deceived, seeing her arrive. They struggled to prop themselves up, angrily shouting and yelling at Jessie. Among the group, some had lost their arms, some had broken legs, and some had their tongues torn out. Their terrifying and wretched appearance frightened Jessie, causing her to instinctively step back, wanting to flee. Bob pushed her hard with a cold expression. How could he possibly watch her escape from the place he had specifically chosen for her? Jessie screamed and howled, trying to run. But the group of people desperately closed in on her. They surrounded her, just as they had once surrounded Laura. Didn't you say you were Daniel's wife? Didn't you say you could get us out of that godforsaken place? And now what? You've made our lives a living hell, yet you're completely unscathed. Daniel's mom, do you really think you can get away with that? Their distorted features twisted into grotesque smiles directed at her. Jessie shook violently all over, her expression on the verge of collapse as she said, I'm telling you, Daniel just asked me to come here to cool off for a few days. If you dare lay a hand on me, Daniel will skin you alive and break every bone in your body. Those people no longer believed her. The injuries they had suffered were all because they had trusted this woman too much. If it weren't for that, they wouldn't have had to endure so much suffering. Bob no longer paid attention to their dog-eat-dog squabble. He closed the iron door, and gradually, the sound of Jessie's piercing screams came from inside. Justin took Laura to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. After that incident, her leg injury only allowed her to walk slowly. Justin followed behind her, his mind filled with the words the doctor had said to him before they left. MS. Laura's leg injury has improved a lot based on the current condition, but due to the psychological trauma from the stress, she still feels that her leg hasn't recovered. Laura noticed he was lost in thought and hadn't caught up, so she stopped walking and turned back to look at him in surprise. Justin pressed his lips together, forced a smile, and quickly stepped forward to take her hand. Is there anything you'd like to eat? I've given our housekeeper the day off today, so I'll be making lunch. Laura smiled and teased him. Oh no, am I going to go hungry? Seeing her smile, Justin felt some of his frustration fade away. Justin took her to the supermarket to buy groceries. Watching the busy Justin selecting items, Laura put away her smile that had gone numb from overuse. She knew that Justin had a hard time taking care of her, but there are some things she is destined to resolve on her own. Justin happened to see Laura hanging up the phone as he drove over. He was a bit surprised. Who was that? Laura replied in a low voice, My mom. She's urging me again to hurry over and pick out a wedding dress. She didn't look at Justin's expression. She walked straight to the passenger side, opened the door, and got in. Until the car pulled over to the side of the road, Justin looked at Laura with an extremely serious expression. Laura, don't you want to marry me? When he said these words, it felt as if a needle had pricked his heart. Everything he did for Laura was not for her repayment. He didn't want Laura to agree to marry him out of gratitude toward Laura's mom. Laura looked back at him with a face full of astonishment. Before she could speak, he continued, Actually, you don't need to feel burdened. I'm doing all this for you not because I want something in return. I won't force or pressure you, if this makes you uncomfortable. I'll talk to your mom about it. Laura understood the meaning behind his words. Seeing that she hadn't responded to him for a long time, Justin seemed to instantly understand what she meant. He only hesitated for a moment. Let's make it today. I'll go to your place this afternoon. Just as he was about to turn his head back, Laura suddenly reached her hand into his pocket. Justin suddenly held his breath. Laura noticed his movement and also felt his body becoming stiff. She simply fumbled around a bit and quickly found the diamond ring. Without a second thought, she slipped it onto her own finger. Then, with a beaming smile, she looked at Justin. How about it? Does it look good? Justin was stunned, his lips parting slightly. Laura. Justin, at first I did agree to marry you because I wanted to escape him, but that's not the case now. I won't sacrifice my lifelong happiness again by marrying a man who isn't worthy of my devotion, so you can rest assured, I truly want to marry you not because I'm forced, threatened, or have no other choice. The sincerity in her eyes seemed to burn Justin. He excitedly unbuckled his seatbelt and hugged Laura. Justin, who always appeared gloomy in front of outsiders, now looked like a child who had just been given candy. After returning home, Justin was bustling around in the kitchen. Laura sat on the sofa, watching him through the glass door. She curled her lips into a light smile, then picked up her phone and took a photo of her finger wearing the diamond ring. She found that familiar profile picture, tapped the screen lightly, and sent it to him. I'm getting married. There was a long silence on the other end. An hour later, Justin finished cooking and called for Laura to wash her hands and come eat. The phone suddenly let out a ding sound. Wishing you happiness. Laura, her eyes flickered as her fingers typed out a few more sentences. It wasn't until she heard footsteps that she naturally set her phone down. Justin hadn't failed to notice her actions. He had always known that Laura wasn't as calm as she appeared on the surface. She stood up with a smile, pulling Justin along to go eat together. After lunch, They went together to pick out a wedding dress. Emmanuel's home had long prepared several wedding dresses tailored for her. Laura only needed to try them on and make a selection. He carefully photographed Laura wearing each wedding dress. By the end of the day, Laura was completely exhausted. Justin volunteered to be her nanny once again, running a bath, a gentle massage, until Laura closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. The phone suddenly vibrated with a ringing sound. He quietly left the room and ran to the balcony to answer the phone. "Mr. Justin, there's news from over there. Daniel has been targeted recently. He's overwhelmed with work but still refuses to give up on investigating news about his wife. I heard he was in a car accident, and he was discharged from the hospital early before his leg injury had even healed." Justin, a profound glint flashed in his eyes. "How are the negotiations going over there?" "I was just about to mention this to you. The people over there sent a message saying someone has already approached them for discussions, asking how much we can offer. I haven't given them a reply yet, as it still depends on your decision. It's just strange. Who could it be that also hates Daniel so much, to the point of wanting to ruin him, to make him lose everything he's worked so hard for? And this person actually had the same idea as you. Even the terms they proposed were almost identical, except their budget isn't as sufficient as ours. If we were to compete head-on with them, they definitely wouldn't be able to outbid us." Justin remained silent without responding. He probably knew who this person was. "Stay where you are for now, don't snatch it from her hand." The assistant quickly understood what he meant. "Mr. Justin, do you mean Mrs. Justin?" Justin didn't answer again. After giving him a few more instructions, he hung up the phone. He lit a cigarette and turned his gaze elsewhere, Laura's bedroom. After a long while, he suddenly let out a light laugh. What on earth was he thinking? To believe that Laura, after being hurt, was a dodder flower that needed his protection. She has always been the smartest and most resilient rose. Meanwhile, in Italy, Daniel was readmitted to the hospital not long after being discharged. George stayed by his side without leaving an inch, covered in wounds. This time, their base had been discovered by their opponents. Fortunately, there weren't many people guarding the place that day, and most only suffered minor injuries. But except for Daniel, in order to go upstairs and retrieve his and Laura's wedding photo, his leg, which hadn't fully recovered, was injured again. Looking at the half-dead Daniel, George punched the wall in fury. They took turns watching over Daniel until he was fully conscious. "Daniel, we didn't find Jessie's body, she might have escaped." Daniel's eyes kept rolling, his lips chapped. The photo. George clenched his face, his lungs feeling as if they were about to burst. He was so angry that he punched the table. "Daniel, didn't you ever suspect anything? It's obvious someone leaked it. Can't you see who it is? It's Laura. She didn't care about you or the lives of the brothers. She betrayed us." Daniel's pale face instantly turned cold. He mustered all his strength to pull at George's wrist. His eyes were wide with fury as he glared at her. "I said, the photo." Bob entered the room just in time. Seeing him like this, he took out the photo from the side and handed it to Daniel. Daniel immediately released George. He clutched the photo tightly, protecting it. Bob, his eyes were deep and profound, a flicker of mockery passing through them as his gaze shifted. Daniel, though covered in wounds all over his body, he had protected the photograph perfectly. Anyone who saw it would think he loved Laura so much that he disregarded his own life and death. But Bob found it utterly ridiculous. If he truly loved her so much, how could he have cheated on Laura with another woman? He even had a child with that woman and deceived Laura into getting a fake marriage certificate. The more he thought about it, the more he felt Laura deserved better. Even his gaze toward Daniel grew noticeably colder. George had been keeping a close watch on Bob. Suddenly, he strode over, grabbing Bob's collar tightly, his eyes blazing with fury. "Was it you? Was it you who did it? I've suspected you all along. Weren't you always by Laura's side? Why wouldn't she take you with her when she left? Last time Laura's leg was injured by Daniel, you desperately rushed over and even cursed out Daniel for her. Are you two in cahoots? Are you conspiring to get back at Daniel? Say something." Seeing him remain silent, George furiously threw a punch at him. Bob was beaten to the ground, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He reached up to wipe it away, the disdainful coldness in his eyes making George even more furious and wanting to rush over and beat him up. But then he suddenly spoke up. "I may have more conscience than some people, but I won't betray Daniel. Back when you beat your alcoholic father to death and then stole Laura's bag at the mall. It was Laura who spared your life and even found someone to help you with the lawsuit. For everything you have now, besides thanking Daniel, you should also thank Laura. She's missing now, and no one knows whether she's dead or alive, yet you still want to smear her name. George's face flickered with emotion, a trace of guilt flashing across it before quickly vanishing without a trace. Laura did save me once, but my second life was given by Daniel, and I am loyal only to Daniel. Daniel remained silent, only showing any reaction when they mentioned Laura. He motioned for Bob to come closer, trembling eyelids slowly lifting to look at him. You really don't know Laura's whereabouts. Bob tightened his face and was about to answer, but suddenly the door was forcefully pushed open. Found her, we found Laura. Daniel suddenly changed his expression. George immediately reacted. Where? Hurry up and tell me where. The newcomer gasped for breath, bending over as sweat dripped from his cheeks onto the ground. City P. Daniel jolted all over, his hands involuntarily clenching the bedsheet. His voice was hoarse, yet it carried a faint trace of excitement and anticipation. He was eager to get out of bed, but a sharp pain made him recoil abruptly. George immediately rushed to support him. Daniel clutched his arm tightly. Book the flight. We're going now. George frowned tightly and tried to persuade him. Daniel, we already know where Laura is. She just went back home and won't run away. It won't make a difference if we wait a little longer. Let's go after your injuries have healed a bit. Daniel felt inexplicably anxious. George didn't know about Laura's past. She would never return to City P, to that home she deeply detested. No, we have to go now. He made a move to get up. The younger brother, who had just caught his breath beside him, suddenly changed his expression. Daniel, there's one more thing. Laura is getting married. My head exploded with a boom. What? How is that possible? George was the first to react. Daniel froze in shock, his mind going blank for a moment. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. George roughly grabbed the man and glared at him fiercely. Are you sure? The one you're definitely going to marry is Laura? The man nodded, trembling. Why yes, it's Laura. Daniel's voice suddenly seemed to go hoarse. Impossible. I am her husband. Laura, this is just to make me angry. It must be so. His eyes were full of panic. Bob, seeing him like this, deliberately reminded him. Daniel, this isn't impossible. Laura didn't know about you and her making fake divorce papers before. Now that she knows, legally she is unmarried. Daniel froze for a moment. Yes, he had actually forgotten. Back then, he had personally asked someone to help him and Laura get a fake marriage certificate. Then, on the same afternoon, he accompanied Jessie to get a real marriage certificate. My heart felt as if it were being torn apart, sending waves of intense pain. George, go buy the plane tickets immediately. I'm returning to the country. George couldn't argue with him, so he resignedly went to book the tickets. But before leaving, he once again fixed his gaze on Bob, yet Bob stared back without the slightest hesitation. The plane flew at high altitude. Daniel's heart never found a moment of peace. Meanwhile, on Laura's end, she had been running around in a fluster since the night before the wedding. Justin feared she would exhaust herself, so he took charge of everything. Later, it became Laura watching him so busy that his feet barely touched the ground. Justin knew she didn't have any close friends here, so he didn't set up a best man or bridesmaids at the wedding. She watched him meticulously planning every detail of the wedding, and another wave of guilt washed over her heart, simply because she knew this wedding is bound to have some unexpected little incidents. Justin finished his tasks and entered Laura's room holding a cup of hot milk. Seeing that she was in the shower, he softly reminded her a few things, then placed the milk on the table and left. His phone in his pocket started vibrating. Mr. Justin, Madam has already spread the news. With so many people at tomorrow's wedding, if something goes wrong, how are we supposed to explain it? Justin lowered his gaze. Increase the security detail. Protect her. But Mr. Justin, this is the wedding you've been looking forward to for so long. For it to be ruined like this is just too. The person on the other end of the phone remained silent for a long time. Just when the assistant thought he wouldn't respond anymore, a sound suddenly came from the other side. None of us are her, and we haven't experienced what she's been through. No matter what she wants to do, I'll be there with her. Laura, who was standing behind him, Laura slowly lowered her eyes and quietly left. Laura's mom had already arrived at the scene. She had been waiting for this day for who knows how long. A face, worn out from smiling through all the comings and goings. Laura ignored her, just staring at her phone. She knew how unfair it would be to Justin if she disrupted today's wedding, but she had no other choice. The wedding proceeded step by step according to the prearranged schedule. Throughout the entire process, Justin held her hand tightly, refusing to let go for even a moment. Laura, her palm grew sweaty from his grip, yet she made no move to pull her hand away. Justin's friend approached them and said to Laura with a smile, "Congratulations to you both, and thank you, Ms. Laura, for making the wish come true, finally marrying the most perfect muse in his heart." The people around burst into laughter at once. Justin didn't mind letting them laugh at all. Laura slowly raised her head and fixed her gaze on Justin's face, his features as if meticulously carved. Justin's every glance at her was filled with deep affection. She never expected that the person she casually saved back in Italy would turn out to be the future head of the City P. Emanuel family. Back then, she would have gone through fire and water for Daniel. Let alone breaking into a drug lord's territory to save someone important to him. Saving Justin was just incidental, yet he earnestly repaid her for saving his life. Laura firmly gripped his hand in return. Justin instinctively looked down at her, only to see her smiling at him. Soon, the ceremony will begin. The wedding theme song began to play. Laura, in her pure white wedding dress, crossed through the crowd and arrived by Justin's side. I had fantasized countless times in my dreams about this wedding, yet it was unfolding in this manner, and the person standing beside me had changed from Daniel to Justin. Justin looked at her with overwhelming admiration in his eyes. He had married the woman he most desired to wed, and at this moment, he was the happiest man alive. Unable to restrain himself, he leaned in to kiss Laura. The venue immediately erupted into enthusiastic cheers and applause, but at this very moment, the door was suddenly pushed open with force. Dozens of men in black suits quickly took control of the scene. They did not allow anyone to move. The leader, George, stared intently at Laura on the stage. He never would have thought Laura would marry another man. Didn't she love Daniel to death? How could she betray Daniel? Behind him, Daniel was wheeled in on a wheelchair. Who is this? Exactly, on such a joyous day, why come here to cause trouble? Look at his demeanor. No matter how you see it, he doesn't seem like a decent person. The crowd immediately grew restless. Everyone present today is City PS prominent figures. Laura's mom found the person in the wheelchair familiar, and upon taking a closer look, she immediately gasped in shock. Wasn't this the cheap son-in-law who had run off with her daughter back then? According to Laura, they never actually got married. It was Daniel who favored her, using a fake divorce certificate to deceive her, seeing his aggressive posture as if he intended to disrupt the wedding. Laura's mom immediately flew into a rage, but before she could step forward, a woman suddenly rushed out from the crowd, pointing at Daniel and scolding him furiously. "You murderer, how dare you show up here?" Her hysterical screaming startled everyone present, causing them to look at each other in confusion. She gritted her teeth in hatred, wanting to pounce on him, but was George pushed down. A middle-aged man hurried out to help her up. When his gaze met Daniel's, his eyes were also filled with loathing. "You bastard, you got your elder brother killed. How dare you come back to the country? Honey, call the police quickly. He's a wanted criminal. Have the police arrest him." The woman clearly became mentally unhinged after seeing him. Daniel didn't even regard the two of them as worthy of his attention. His gaze, from beginning to end, remained fixed straight ahead. Laura stood not far away, the woman who had haunted his dreams for so long, the woman he had searched for countless days and nights. God knows, Laura after she disappeared. He thought she had been taken by old enemies he had offended, fearing he would never see her again in this lifetime. He, who had never believed in Buddhism, even prayed day and night, he paid no attention to his biological father, merely giving a cold glance as he had them dragged aside. He struggled to get up, leaning on his cane, and tried to step by step make his way to Laura's side. Slowly, he reached out his right hand toward her, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm sorry, Laura. I came too late." Instantly, the eyes of everyone in the room fell upon Laura, but she only cast a brief, indifferent glance at the person before her. Then, the corners of his lips curled up. "It's not late, not at all." Another group of people surged in from outside. "Don't move, everyone, raise your hands." The police who had been lying in wait suddenly appeared. George immediately changed his expression and stepped forward to try to escape with Daniel, but the quick-witted police officer shot him in the leg. The bullet pierced through the flesh, splattering blood. He cried out in pain as he fell to the ground, quickly pinned down by the officers who had caught up to him. The detective who organized the arrest immediately stepped forward to reassure the crowd. This group of individuals are key suspects in cross-border criminal activities. The authorities have been monitoring them for a long time, however, since they have consistently refused to return to the country and remained abroad evading justice. We, the police, have had limited means to bring them to account. Fortunately, with the cooperation of who provided crucial leads on these serious offenders, rest assured we will ensure your personal safety. Everyone felt relieved upon seeing the police. The complaints they had in their hearts turned into admiration. Daniel looked at Laura in disbelief. His eyes instantly reddened. "Laura, I've done something wrong to you. You can punish me however you want, but are you really not going to give me even one chance?" Laura always looked calmly into his eyes, yet in her gaze, there was no longer the tender affection of the past. "Daniel, how dare you ask me for another chance?" Her words pierced Daniel's heart like needles. The pain made him curl up slightly. His subordinates were taken away by the police one by one, filled with resentment. The scene was in chaos. The originally perfect wedding venue was disrupted, and the woman he loved most was now standing by another man's side. "Laura, I..." Suddenly, George, who was about to be taken away in the crowd, began to resist violently. He took hostage Daniel's mom, who was not far from him. He knew this woman was Daniel's biological mother, the mother of that villainous elder brother. He smashed the wine bottle on the table and pressed it hard against her neck, drawing blood in an instant. The crowd screamed in panic. Amid the chaos, someone slipped in through the back door, threw a smoke bomb toward Laura's direction, and quickly whisked Daniel away. Justin, his first reaction was to shield Laura firmly behind him. The police hurried to give chase, leaving a few officers behind to wrap things up. Looking at the man in front of her, Laura spoke slowly. "Was it you who replaced my people and called the police?" Justin looked around and nodded. "Laura, I don't want anything to happen to you. I'm your husband, and from now on, I'll face these dangers for you." He knew Laura's plan, and he also knew that she had always planted someone by Daniel's side. She deliberately leaked the news of her presence in the country to lure Daniel into coming for her, and over there, she had her subordinates completely destroy Daniel's foundation. Now, whether at home or abroad, Daniel can no longer return. She had planned everything, but she specifically chose to use her own methods to get back at Daniel. Justin didn't want her to ruin herself because of a scumbag like Daniel, so he helped her in his own way. The wedding was forced to pause because of this incident. Laura's mom looked at Laura with a mix of anger and amusement. "Do you have some kind of grudge against marriage? Something always goes wrong at every wedding." Laura was too exhausted to respond to her. Laura's mom was even more enraged seeing her like this. "Stop right there. I'm talking to you. Do you even see me as your mother anymore?" Laura suddenly halted in her tracks. "Mom, do you think you deserve that title?" Not long after her father left, Laura's mom started an affair with her male lover. The very next week, she moved him into their home. The man was lazy and gluttonous, and after swindling a large sum of money from her, he ran away. From that day on, Laura's mom stopped pursuing men younger than herself. She only went after wealthy ones. Age wasn't an issue. As long as they were willing to buy her bags, clothes, and jewelry, she would do anything they asked. Laura watched her mother shuttle between different men every day, while she herself was burning with a 40-degree fever and had no one to take care of her. From that moment on, the word mom had been erased from her heart. Laura's mom looked awful. Her lungs felt like they were about to explode, but as soon as the phone rang, she glanced at the name, immediately turned around, and answered with a smile. Laura had long grown accustomed to it. Laura's mom had caused her so much pain that she thought Daniel would be her salvation. But unexpectedly, Daniel was just another abyss. She couldn't trust anyone easily, nor could she rely on anyone again. The only one she could truly depend on was herself. Daniel had been hiding in disgrace for half a month. The inflammation in his leg was excruciatingly painful. He could no longer bear it and decided to go find Laura, and it seemed Laura had long known he would come. She would wait for him every day at the place where they first met. Meanwhile, Justin had people watching over her to ensure her safety, until Daniel actually appeared. Half a month of life on the run had left Daniel in a wretched state. Gone was the imposing aura he once had when he intended to disrupt the wedding. He was wearing clothes that he had picked up from who knows where, with a hat pulled down. He wanted to reach out and hold Laura's hand, but then he saw how clean her clothes were, while his own were smelly and dirty. He still chose to slowly pull his hand back. "Laura, have you vented your anger? Back then, I truly only wanted you to go in and control your temper. I was afraid that if one day I wasn't around, you would get hurt too. I wasn't looking down on you. I genuinely like you. How could I possibly look down on you? I also truly didn't know you would suffer so much inside. I originally had them arrange a private room for you, hoping you could calm down in there. I never expected Jesse to send people to hurt you. Does your wound still hurt?" His voice choked up, his eyes wet and red, filled with bitter sorrow and immense pain. Seeing Daniel like this, she suddenly let out a cold laugh. "Feel satisfied? Daniel, which incident are you referring to? Is it getting a fake marriage certificate with me? Or is touching my body like touching your own? Completely uninteresting, like a salted fish, or sending Emily to Jesse?" Daniel's eyes suddenly contracted, so she had heard those words too. He anxiously tried to explain. "No, Laura, listen to me. Those words were just empty talk. I never meant any of it. Since you heard those things, you must have also heard me say that I love you, that I could never leave you in this lifetime." Laura, the sarcasm in her eyes grew more intense. Daniel, do you know why I'm here? Do you really think I came to listen to you say these things? Or do you really believe that after all you've done to hurt me, I can pretend nothing happened and turn around to offer you forgiveness? Daniel, what do you take me for? These 12 years, I've long been tired chasing your shadow, watching you go from loving me to loving yourself, knowing full well you changed long ago, that you were no longer the person you once were, yet still foolishly choosing to wait, gambling on your change of heart. I was foolish, and for today's outcome, I bear half the responsibility. But Daniel, I, Laura, have always believed in repaying kindness with kindness and settling debts with vengeance. She gave him a cold glance and tossed a phone over for him to see. It showed all his hard work turning to ashes. She wanted to witness with her own eyes everything they had built together go up in smoke. Daniel stared blankly at the video, watching Bob point out each location one by one. He puffed out his cheeks, then suddenly let out a laugh. He had known all along that Bob was her man. He just hadn't expected it. She truly would never forgive him again, no matter what he did before. Laura would always give him 3 chances. For every matter, he had 3 opportunities to win her back. But at some point, without him realizing, he had exhausted all his chances without even knowing it. He had no idea Laura had completely given up on him. There was simply no possibility left between them. He wept, tears falling. Daniel took off his hat and extended his hand to Laura. Laura, if it were you arresting me, I'd feel better about it. She glanced at him expressionlessly. What's the use of self-righteous comfort? She neither took action nor paid any attention. Laura stood up and turned to leave. Police officers swarmed around, afraid that Daniel would try to escape again. They immediately pinned him to the ground. His face pressed against the dirt as tears streamed into the mud. His eyes were filled with tears, yet he stubbornly strained to catch one last glimpse of her fading figure. Perhaps after this parting, he and she would never have the chance to meet again. After Daniel was arrested, Daniel's mom sent someone to deliver an extravagant gift. Laura just glanced at it coldly and had it thrown out. Madam, isn't this such a waste? Did this Daniel's mom offend you in some way? The nanny Tina couldn't help asking. She lowered her head, flipping through the pages, and softly replied, Tina, you should take it home, it would be a shame to lose it. Tina immediately forgot what she had asked in her delight. Laura did indeed hate Daniel, but she didn't have much fondness for the Jeffrey family either. She simply didn't want to have the slightest connection with such a family. The doorbell suddenly rang. Tina ran to open the door. When she saw Bob standing at the door, Laura's face broke into a rare smile. She took Bob out for a meal and found him a place to rest. Justin listened to his assistant's report at the company. The paper in his hand unknowingly crumpled into a ball. The assistant was speechless, shrinking his neck as he looked at him. Mr. Justin, should we have someone keep an eye on this Bob? After all, the madam seems to treat him differently. Justin suddenly put down the pen in his hand and leaned back in his chair, as if pondering something. After a long while, he slowly closed his eyes. Forget it, let him be. He has too little confidence in himself. He knew Bob had also done a great many things for Laura. He had always been by Daniel's side, where a single misstep could cost him his life. His contributions were no less than his own. Facing Daniel, he was still confident that Laura would definitely not choose him. But when facing Bob, that confidence completely vanished. He tightly gripped his phone, wanting to make a call to Laura, but after thinking for a long time, the screen remained stuck on the contacts page. He didn't accomplish anything all day and spaced out several times during the meeting. His assistant, noticing his distracted state, called off the meeting. It wasn't until the crowd had dispersed that Justin finally snapped out of it. The assistant sighed helplessly. There was nothing he could do when faced with someone as lovesick as Justin. What's more, the woman he fell for was no ordinary woman. She was a woman of steel who had survived the hail of bullets. Even while mentally wounded, she could still plan to severely wound the man who had hurt her. He had to admire the woman his boss had chosen, while following along with the sentiment, I can't help but think, once you've fallen in love with such a breathtaking woman, how could there possibly be room for any other woman in your eyes? Justin arrived home just in time to see Laura saying goodbye to Bob. He waited until she entered the house before following her inside. Laura smiled at the returning Justin and rushed up to him, giving him a hug. The warm embrace brought immense comfort to both him and her, but Justin soon grew afraid that such an embrace might be a farewell gesture. Laura noticed his distraction and asked with a smile, "What are you thinking about?" Nothing. Laura pulled him inside and helped him take off his suit jacket. In a couple of days, I want to go on a trip, to clear my mind. Justin's heart suddenly jolted, and he instinctively tightened his grip on her wrist. Will you come back then? He quickly asked, but in an instant, he was afraid of getting the answer that scared him. Laura immediately understood what he was afraid of. Suddenly, she reached out and hugged him. "Silly. I want you to come traveling with me. I was just a little worried that you might be too busy, so I didn't get a chance to say it." Justin stared at her in stunned silence. He hadn't expected her to mean it that way. "Aren't you supposed to leave with your subordinate?" He felt like a complete fool at that moment. He was somewhat flustered and couldn't quite believe what he was seeing as he looked into Laura's eyes. Laura burst out laughing with a fut sound. "So all those nights you couldn't sleep, suffering from insomnia, you were afraid I would leave with Bob?" Her laughter immediately made him blush. Laura, seeing him like this, she deliberately put on a pitiful expression and said, "But there's no other way. Bob found a girlfriend. He doesn't want me anymore. He came back this time, partly to see me one last time, and partly to say goodbye to me properly." Justin looked at her in stunned surprise, then suddenly felt a surge of joy in his heart. He unconsciously let out a sigh of relief. Where is his girlfriend? Why didn't he bring her along? "Why are you so interested in someone else's wife? What, did I disappoint you? Or do you have a problem with me?" Laura raised an eyebrow, deliberately teasing him. "No." Justin immediately defended himself, wrapping his arm around Laura's shoulder. Laura smiled and stopped teasing him. They had dinner together and took a walk along the river. Justin and Laura both felt an inexplicable sense of ease. The breeze brushed past, as if blowing away all her weariness. Laura told him many stories about her past with Daniel, as if she had completely let go. Each story she told was like turning a page. Those deeply hurtful past experiences can now only become fragmented memories. She had always wanted to thank Justin. It was he who led her out of those painful memories. If it weren't for Justin, she might have truly withered away in that fruitless relationship. She suddenly stopped walking, looking at him with a serious expression. "Justin, let's get married." Justin was completely stunned, yet instinctively nodded in agreement. Laura stood on her toes with a smile and kissed his lips. This time, it was only him and her. She didn't need anyone to witness her marriage, nor did she need flowery words to vow her love. What she wanted, from beginning to end, was simplicity, stability, and peace. Just plain congee and simple dishes, just humble tea and plain meals, just him and a small home. Justin remained silent for a long time. Yet he suddenly reached out and embraced her. No one knew how long he had been waiting for this moment. From the first time I saw Laura, from the moment she extended her hand to him, from the moment she spoke and introduced her name to him, his gaze was already locked on her, and he could never escape it for the rest of his life. She said she was married, that she had a man who loved her. He was disappointed, yet felt that such a woman deserved to be treated well. But he never expected that the man did not treat her well. He felt both anger and a sense of secret delight. Did this mean, could he also have a chance to have her? He loved Laura, without words, only wanting to express it through actions. Justin specifically finished his work ahead of schedule. He accompanied Laura on travels to many countries, and in their favorite city, they held their own wedding. Laura sent Bob a postcard. She also sent many, many photos. Most of them were of her wearing a white wedding dress, smiling happily, a smile he hadn't seen in a long time. He had a whole wall of such photos. There's a little dog at his feet, barking and whining playfully at him. "Girlfriend, you've already eaten too many bones today. Aren't you afraid your stomach will burst?" It seemed to understand, but continued to whine and act spoiled without giving in. Bob laughed and threw a bone. He didn't tell Laura. His girlfriend is a corgi. The end.